All right. So, an exciting and really topical project that you guys have just done is aiming for gold for CNN Worldwide's coverage of the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, South Korea. So, Stephen, how did this project originate? I feel like you guys do a fair amount of work for CNN.
Yeah. So what was, and this really started back. I think we got the call around the beginning of the summer because they obviously CNN doesn't do any of the program, whatever, but they do a lot of backstories and things like that. So
Athlete
it
profiles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very interesting. At first, they wanted to keep it just more generic, just Olympic type of thing. But then the more we got into it, they wanted to kind of sprinkle some Korean textures into it. So it really was an evolutionary process. And so we didn't know. Well, we've done a lot of international stuff, and we're pretty used to trying to, I guess, walk that fine line between making something indigenous and not making it too forced or obvious. So so it's a real balance in there that because oftentimes the client will want to make sure they can really hear it, and we understand that. Well, that's great, except that you're going to be hearing this over and over and over again, and you may get tired of hearing this Korean drum dance sound too loud, that type of thing. So it was a lot of back and forth, and we did a lot of research and to determine what some of the popular sounds were and that type of thing. And at one point there was a real popular Korean artist that kind of helped us, I guess, get over the hurdle. I'm trying to think of what her name was.
Is it Luna?
Luna.
Yeah.
The gayageum, that the Korean zither. Yep.
Yeah. So Ted, I think, was out of town for a week, the 1 week when they were like grilling me, and I'm like, Chad, why'd you leave? He's the one that really kind of gets in the trenches with them. And so anyway, but once I sent them that video and the sounds, so she had 3 or 4 different great things, and so that really got us all kind of in sync and lockstep with trying to kind of go after that the Korean textures. So from there, it was a matter of just taking the existing track, the scratch track we had done, and layering in the instruments. And then, of course, they had a team that was actually in Korea that they kept playing the stuff for to make sure that it was authentic and that type of thing. So yeah, that's kind of how that came about.
Yeah, I
so
wondered.
Here we are.
Hard to know what to have that sort of knowledge as to what are the Korean instruments and what's a Korean sound, and so you aren't hammering them over the head with it. But yeah, it did seem like something that would have to be pretty thoroughly researched to have it come out correctly.
It was, and to the point of even playing it at the Hong Kong office, we had to show that this was Korean and not Chinese or Vietnamese, and we literally had to pull a mix with just the specific Korean instruments and then links to native Koreans playing them to show, because in some regions, what may be, if you cross over from one country to the other, it's kind of like with Latino music, how different is Cuban and Tejano? It's if you choose the wrong instrument, you become very disingenuous quickly.
Right. So did you guys ultimately? It sounds like you had enough time though to get it right.
Yeah, it was. I mean, these kinds of things they know way far in advance. Plus, there's a huge process visually that goes on.
Right.
So and that goes, and then with a company like Turner or CNN, they allow a lot of time to be able to get people to chime in and make sure everything's not only sounding good but is politically correct.
Right. And then there was a big graphics package that went with that music. Are you involved with that, or that's wholly done on the CNN side?
Yeah, they do that on their end.
Yeah, they do all that.
Does the music come first and then the graphics go to the music?
It really varies.
Yeah. In fact, people ask me what comes first, the words or the music, and I always tell them it's the deadline.
But that's true.
But
in this case, we did score to their. They had already had some graphic concepts, and we did start being inspired and writing to their visuals, which usually you kind of go back and forth, and sometimes it's just frames that you see, and they say it's going to be about 12 seconds, and here's the look, and you kind of explore reference tracks and trying to nail the pacing and the instrumentation, and then once you have a rudimentary track done that everyone's liking, they're usually in the background continuing to evolve the graphics. So it's usually quite a bit of back and forth, and then when you get a time lock, you do any of those little final nuances or sound sweetening elements.
Right. And then you also had the Dallas and Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra record music for the project. They obviously did sort of typical orchestral sounds. Did they also do some of the Korean sounds, or did those come from Korean artists? And how hard is to get all of that organized? Because that seems like a giant project on its own.
Well, go ahead, Stephen.
Well, I was just going to say, typically you don't get the whole orchestra in at the same time. But one, it's hard to find a room big enough to do that, and two is really to get that many people scheduled. So we do it in sections, like we'll do violins and violas. And then we'll do cello, and if it's a upright bass, contrabass, or whatever, then all that kind of stuff happens at different times. The French horns come in separately from the trumpets and the bones and that type of thing. And even when the brass is in, the trumpets and trombones, they typically get recorded separately. So it's the being able to schedule those at different times helps us be able to, get it all done. So,
and in media, you traditionally have to pull subtractive mixes of just strings and drums, just horns and drums, and if you don't cut them discretely, you're kind of stuck with one big full mix because of all the bleed through from the instruments. So in media,
it's tracks. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So that probably makes it both easier and harder.
Mm-hmm.
And then did they handle the playing of the Korean instruments, or did you guys have Korean musicians do that, or how did you handle that part?
Mostly those were basically, there's a lot of samples out there that are just great samples, especially when it comes to plucked instruments and to percussion things. So almost all of those Korean sounds were all basically sampled sounds. There might have been, Chad, was there a drum? I can't remember if we did a live drum thing or not.
We did. We did pick up a drum that's part of that janggu kit and add it to a loop that we had to do tempo adjustments. And it's a very difficult instrument because you take sticks and hit the drum head and the side, and then you clang the sticks together. So it's this whole way of playing this syncopated drum figure, and we basically combined samples with some stuff that we enhanced to make it natural to the track, and then some of these exotic zither instruments were sampled and readjusted to tempos, and a lot of the tricks that unless you're going to go to that country, you often have to work that way.